fisheries have been really much better. There's evidence that these fisheries have been much better regulated over time. That's not the case for every single fishery, for sure. But in general, these things have really improved the way that we manage.
Is that globally, or is that just...
That's for the United States.
For the United States specifically.
If we want to think about global fisheries, we have to think about so there's fisheries that a country has sovereign rights to, and these are fish resources or marine resources within their EEZ, their exclusive economic zone. Mm-hmm. And that's defined by, there was a UN convention on the use of marine resources that defined this 200 nautical mile buffer outside of a 12 nautical mile buffer from a country's baseline coast. And so the 12 nautical miles was your territory. Mm-hmm. And then beyond those, another 200 nautical miles, that ended up being your exclusive economic zone or your right to use marine resources. Now, you can think about places like the United States, where you can go hundreds of nautical miles and in some directions and not hit another country. Mm-hmm. But you can think about places like the Caribbean. You can think about places in the South China Sea, for example. The Mediterranean, where even in the UK, where countries' exclusive economic zones don't go all the way to 200 nautical miles because another country's interacts. And so these countries then have to determine their share. And so globally, there's fisheries within these EEZs. There's fisheries outside of them on the high seas that aren't governed by kind of national sovereignty. And you have different layers of regulation, different marine protected areas where you're not allowed to fish that kind of overlay a network of fisheries regulation. And as you move from one kind of invisible boundary in the ocean to another, you have a different agency that might be responsible, or a different country might be responsible for enforcing these regulations. And as a result, you get something called illegal, unreported fishing and unregulated fishing, IUU fishing. And this is a big problem for fisheries. It's one of the drivers of overfishing in the world. And there's a really great program. There's a website called the Global Ocean Watch. And the Global Ocean Watch uses satellite data at night. So you can see night lights of where fish boats have their lights on at night to track where they're supposed to be or not supposed to be. And also these kind of reportings from transponders on boats that tell you where boats are in the ocean. And they're actually able to track where some of this illegal fishing is operating in the world, even though someone might not be out there to observe it.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I can imagine it just being a little bit contentious in places like the Mediterranean. I mean, quite frankly, even with the UK and Europe, I mean, part of the reason why some people voted for Brexit, not too long ago, was to have sort of more control over the waters in and around the UK. And there was even like a bit of a contentious issue in regards to the 5-year period where the European Union could still like use the UK fishing areas basically before, Brexit essentially set in. And I think a lot of people thought that, and I think that did happen to a degree, that a lot of the European countries just kind of raided the fishing larders basically for a period of time. I mean, which is just one example of how territorial disputes can sort of come in this direction, let alone places like the Mediterranean or the Middle East even potentially as well, where, political relationships aren't great at the best of times, let alone with things of this nature as well.